'Tis a custom with Prospero.
A bird of my tongue is better than a beast of yours.
The evil that men do lives after them.
Wherefore art thou rolling?
What dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil?
Blood hath been shed, Dale.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, it's Tony Estrella. I'm the Artistic Director of the GAM Theater. Good to see you kind of again. This is episode 2 of season 2 of Brush Up Your Shakespeare. And if the background looks a little different because it is different. This is a very special episode of Brush Up Your Shakespeare. Not that it's going to be filmed in black and white or anything, but I suppose we could try to do that. That's a nod to those of you who remember the very special episodes of the 70s, which for some reason were always in black and white and too serious, so whatever. But this won't be. Welcome to Mixed Magic Theater. We're here in kind of an away match with our friends. Ricardo Pitts-Wiley is going to be our guest, so I'm going to introduce in a moment. But I want to thank him and everybody here at Mixed Magic for inviting us into their space, because we've been doing this live kind of via Zoom, which has been wonderful and fun, but there's nothing like actually being in the room with the person you're talking to, which in these COVID days is a bit rare. So we're so happy to be in an actual working theater, working with actors and crew and technicians, etc., to bring you some insight into Shakespeare. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest and our host, Ricardo Pitts-Wiley. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Ricardo. Many of you will know this already, but going through it is because it's quite impressive, and this is only, I'm sure, the tip of the iceberg. So Ricardo is an actor, a playwright, a composer, a director. I will add he is also a lifelong teacher, and we're going to talk about all of those things today and how they pertain to his work with Shakespeare across the span of his career. He co-founded Mixed Magic Theater, where we are right now, with his wife Bernadette. Of course, his son Jonathan is now the artistic director, and he was a 2017 Pell Award for Excellence in the Arts in Rhode Island recipient. He is the author and lyricist of the musicals Celebrations, An African Odyssey, Waiting for Bessie Smith, The Spirit Warrior's Dream, which, if you haven't seen yet, go to Mixed Magic Theater, go to their Facebook page, and you can check out their videos. They just did 2 parts on the creation and the development of Spirit Warrior, with a lot of great music in it. So if you have it, even if you remember it, if you got to see it when it happened, and if it's been a while since you are acquainted with it, check it out. It's a great insight into an artistic process, and uplifting, inspiring, and some great art and some really, really, really beautiful music. Something we need at a time like this. A Kwanzaa song, Sarah's Jukebox, Night's People, Man, Woman, Chaos, and The Well of Woman. As a playwright, he has written the civil rights drama Fate Comes Knocking and Reflections, Growing Up a Black Man in America, as well as page-to-stage adaptations of Moby Dick, Frankenstein, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this hour, which will be coming back via streaming, Don Quixote, The Red Tent and Sweat, and The Gilded Six Bits by Zora Neale Hurston. Some of the universities where he's taught: MIT, URI, Rick, and many, many others. He began his professional career, of course, at Trinity Rep in 1974 in productions that many of you will remember, from Brothers to Dragons, A Christmas Carol, Tom Jones, King Lear, The Little Foxes, Another Part of the Forest. This goes on and on and on and on and on. We could be here for a long time. You may probably most recently remember his incredible performance in August Wilson's Radio Golf as the elder Joseph Barton. It was an amazing show from last season. And it seems a long time. It's one of the last actually live plays I get to see, so it's very, very near and dear in my heart. The Piano Lesson, Master Harold and the Boys, Cider House Rules, and so much Shakespeare, which we haven't even talked about yet, including Leontes and The Winter's Tale, King Lear and King Lear, Banquo and Macbeth, Caliban and the Tempest, Othello, etc., etc. The list goes on, and we're going to talk about as much of that as we can cram in possibly into an hour. So I want to say thank you and welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you, Tony. My God, after that introduction, I feel like, who is this guy? You know.
Well, it's yeah. There's a lot there, and we won't even cover a smidgen of it. But thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for coming to Mixed Magic Theater. It's just a thrill to have you here. And you know, both of us have been in this town for 30 years or so. This is the first time you and I have ever been on stage together.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So there's some fixing of those kind of things that we need to take care of.
Absolutely, and this is what a joy and a privilege to for the first time to be in this room with you, the room that you created with your family. For how long has Mixed Magic been here for? 20
years, but we go back. There was 20 years before that, which we had other theater companies and we built other facilities, but Mixed Magic has been around for 20 years now, and it's been a labor. It's been a labor of love, but it's been a labor.
Yeah.
But what I'm most proud of is not only the work that we've done, but we had a mission at the beginning of the company, and we stayed true to it all 20 years of it. And we just believe that we could put a diversity of ideas and images on stage, and do great work. And we've been very fortunate with the artists that we've been able to work with, and some great material too.
Yeah, sure. And for 20 years, well, here's to 20 more. How are you surviving COVID?
Well, you know, we're a nimble organization. We've always had to be nimble. So we were able to make adjustments on the fly a lot of the times. We came up with a concept to turn our main stage here into a theater at a distance type space. But going back into the process, you know, we had to reassemble our team and say, okay, the main thing we want to do is not try to replace theater. We want to remind people of how good that human living experience is. So, you know, I'm a firm believer that great theater is a series of magical moments connected by exposition. And you just really want to push through to the next magical moment.
Right.
Because if it's all magical moments, the audience is tired after about 10 minutes.
That's called spectacle.
Yeah, it's spectacle, right. Absolutely. Right. But so what we decided we would try to do is try to capture those magical moments and create an environment in which we were trying to capture the essence of live theater. We couldn't do whole plays. We wouldn't try to do, you know, replacement shows. We would just say, how can we engage an audience in a participatory process in which there's the greatest reward is when we come back together.
Right. And speaking of coming up, we talked about a little bit in the bio of one of the adaptations you've created, which is Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which you're rehearsing and going to be doing as a streaming event.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about how that came about and how that's going to work in the space?
Well, on November 20th, we'll stream the final product, but when we decided to do it, we decided we could only do 3 or 4 scenes from the play.
Right.
But we would talk about the process. We would try to engage not only the director and the actors, but also the design team, so that people got a kind of a backstage look at how the soup is made, how the sausage is made, but also build some anticipation for telling the whole story. Right. So Christopher Hoyt came up with this set design concept that just fired everything up. And I had a script for Frankenstein, but I had to try to find a way to without telling the whole story, to engage people in the story. And one of the things that was very important to me was trying to go back to the essence of what Mary Shelley was writing about personal responsibility, about acknowledging when you have done something wrong, about what happens to people when they are persecuted to the point where they must retaliate. How, in many ways, Mary Shelley wrote a play that expressed the American ideal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because at the end of the day, that's all the creature wanted. Right. About identity politics, the fact that the creature never got a name. He was always referred to as a thing, a creature, a despised something, you know. So the creature is so magnificent and so large. Literally, in the novel, he's 8 feet tall.
Right.
And a genius. He takes 3 books out of his creator's pocket: Paradise Lost, The Sorrows of Werther, and Plutarch's Lives, and learns the entire human story, and then is able to apply it. And at the end of the day, the creature just didn't want to be alone.
Right.
It didn't want to be cold. It didn't want to be despised. It wanted to be useful. And that was a story I really wanted to tell. But in order to tell that story, I had to divide the creature into 3 parts. So 3 actors play the creature: the alpha personality, decisive, aggressive, decisive, aggressive. The beta, thoughtful and deliberative, and probably the most dangerous. And then the gamma, the thing that wanted most the best of humanity. And I believe that the main purpose of the alpha and the beta was to protect the gamma.
Right.
But when the gamma turns, you got a monster.
Yeah.
You know, when you push something to the edge of misery, what do you expect to happen? Right. So we're excited about that, and maybe not this season coming up, but the next season we hope to remount a full version of Frankenstein. But for right now, we just want to give people a little snippet
taste
of what we can do.
Well, and we were just chatting about it beforehand, and part of your adaptation includes a hefty chunk of Shakespeare.
It does. There's a scene from The Tempest. The first time I played Caliban, I guess the only time I played Caliban was Richard Nealon from Trinity Rep as Prospero up in Worcester. I came to understand that character so profoundly, so that in the scene in the cabin, I have the children of the old man, the old blind man. They play out a scene from Shakespeare, and the scene I chose was The Tempest, where Caliban is introduced, and watching the scene, the creature who's observing and learning language from the cabiners comes to realize that was him. That's what happened to him. What happened to Caliban is what happened to him, but also trying to draw a parallel between literary events, science fiction events, and human nature. All of those things fit in together, and Mary Shelley left the door open for so much of that type of introspection and discovery of literature and language. Not everything about Frankenstein the novel is great literature, but it's a
But
great.
she was, what, 19 when she wrote?
She was 18, I think.
Yeah.
And on a dare, you know, a competition rather. But it's not all great literature, but it is a great story.
Yeah.
And that's why so many adaptations of it have been done, because it's a great story. And one of the things that always amazes me about the novel and what I try to do on the stage is it's devoid of moralistic religious overlay.
Right, right.
It just says, no, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And human beings, you deal with it because you cannot count on. But what's interesting about it also is the creature reads Paradise Lost. In fact, there's a scene we're going to do from Paradise Lost where he reminds his creator, you know, even God, when he kicked Lucifer out of heaven, didn't send him alone.
Right.
You sent me, you kicked me out, and you sent me alone into the wilderness. And it's like, wow. But Milton's language, you know, and
Shakespearean, I mean, and it's
Shakespearean,
same time.
epic.
Yeah, a little bit after, but yeah.
Epic. It's just and flowing and posits so many challenging concepts, which could also be said of Plutarch's Lives, the sorrows of Werther. Just how much misery can a person take?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right.
Well, there's a point where you can't take it anymore.
Right.
But in Shakespeare, I have to say, there was a period in my life when I totally wanted to dismiss myself from Shakespeare because I was being taught, it was being pounded into me that this was the be all and end all of the English language and of the theater. And I found myself asking myself, well, where's my place?
Right.
If all the great stuff has already been written and done, why should I continue to in this field? And I distanced myself from Shakespeare. Not just Shakespeare, but most European writers. Most white American writers too. It's like, well, wait a minute. Where's my voice? But when you start to find your voice, you can go back to the things that you distance yourself from and analyze them totally differently.
Right.
No longer are you looking for validation, you're looking for a
Collaboration.
Collaboration and appreciation.
Right.
Because you go back to Shakespeare and you go, wow, this guy was good.
Right.
But he's not good because I was told he was good. I'm good because I understand how good he is now. Right. And I have a thirst to be good like that too. So.
And one of the things that we've tried to do in this show kind of thing is talk about the fact that the audience comes in with that same thing, right? It's like, I've been told this is the greatest thing in the world, so I must think it's the greatest thing in the world, and then that lets us off the hook from actually proving that it's really good, right? Yeah. And so we can kind of hide behind this, like, he belongs on the Mount Rushmore of artists, therefore it's your fault if you don't get it, when it's usually ours. We haven't done a good job with it. We haven't met it at where it needs to be, because we haven't found the confidence, as you're talking about, to go back to it and approach it and look it in the eye.
And also, because it was, I always have struggled with managing the language. I did for a long time, until I came to the realization that part of the reason I was struggling with the language was because I had dismissed my own voice. I was trying to be Laurence Olivier because I thought that was the standard. I wanted to be James Earl Jones because I thought that was the standard. And then I came to realize, well, wait a minute. If you lose your own voice in telling this, in doing this material, you can't support what you're doing. Your voice has got to be included. But the brilliance of Shakespeare is when you find your voice, the poetry will take care of itself. Yeah. It starts to flow out as opposed to being forced out. As a teacher, I have a concept of teaching acting of let, don't make. Let it happen. Don't try to make it happen. When you try to make something happen, you find yourself participating in actor behavior. I think I should be doing this because I'm saying this, or this is what I think I should be doing because I'm an actor, of course. Actors do things. But when you let it happen, sometimes it takes you back to a place that says, I can do less and energize it more. And Shakespeare constantly gives you an opportunity to do less and energize more.
Well, because he's given you the more in the language, right? So you start to do a lot more. You're going to get in the way of that, et cetera, and you're not going to let that flow, as you point out.
You absolutely are. But also one of the things that he does, which was always a bit of a challenge for me, was he would turn something on his head in the middle of a monologue. Right. I mean, you take Leontes, for example. I mean, all of a sudden, he's like mad. Othello is just mad. All of a sudden, it's like, where did that come from? Right. Well, if you don't energize the language with meaning, all it is a bad scene.
You're right.
But when you let, it's like, well, I thought I just saw my wife kiss another man. Now, it might not have been anything, but I think it is. Right. And I'm going that direction. I'm not going to equivocate on it. I'm going that way.
Right. It becomes the alpha, as you're talking about, right? That alpha comes out, and then you have to let it out versus kind of like trying to psychologically manipulate it and try to find the thing. It's like sometimes it just swings that fast, oftentimes in life.
You know, even in the case of something like Othello, where, you know, which I've played, I've been in Othello 5 times, but I've played the role 3 times. How quickly he can be manipulated.
Right.
Because the thing that when you come to realize that the thing that Othello valued above all was honor.
Mm-hmm.
And if he felt cockled or dishonored or betrayed,
mm-hmm.
that was the ultimate disrespect for him.
Mm-hmm.
As an alpha male, you have to respond to that right now.
Right.
If you hit me, I'm hitting you back right now. I'm not going to sit around and think about, why did he hit me, you know? On the other hand, Iago is a classic beta male,
mm-hmm.
a beta personality who thought about what he wanted to do.
Right.
Built his argument. You know, this may not be true, but I'm gonna act like it's true. You know, I'm gonna set him up using these things. I'm gonna turn him against himself. I'm going to set up his alter ego, Cassio, you know, who many years ago when I produced a production of Othello that I also was in, I insisted that Michael Cassio be black.
Mm-hmm.
And a young man whose name escapes me right now, it'll come to me, beautiful young man and handsome, you know, I wanted the audience to say, why wouldn't Desdemona want to be with somebody just like that?
Right.
You know, a younger, more vital version of him.
Right.
Well, part of the reason Michael Cassio, I believe, was chosen to be his lieutenant was because he was just like Othello.
Right.
Othello saw himself in Michael Cassio, and they both were men of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And they could be manipulated because of their sense of honor. I mean, Michael Cassio even says in honor. Without honor, I am nothing.
Right. Once he gets after the drunk scene, right? It's all that reputation stuff, right? Yeah.
I've dishonored myself.
Yeah. Whereas Iago comes at it from a place of, as you say, the beta place, which is honor doesn't mean anything. It's just a guise I can put on and use to my advantage.
You know, it's very interesting, you know, using a modern political analogy, Democrats have a tendency to be alpha personalities. They need it right now.
Yeah.
Republicans play for the long game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say, we can build a Southern strategy over a 40-year period of time.
Right.
We can stack the courts over a 40-year period of time.
Yeah.
We can take over the school boards and the mayors and the, you know, and the governors' races and the legislators. You know, it's going to take a long time. The problem is 40 years in, 40 years out.
Right.
And sometimes you leave the culture no choice but to stage a, if not violent, but aggressive overthrow.
Yeah.
You know, we can't wait for you to get your act together and be more human or more diverse or more understanding or more aware. We got to kick you out right now, and there's going to be a fight.
Right, and this is something we chatted about before. It brings up a kind of theme that I think I see in Shakespeare all the time, and it's what probably maybe most closely and best embodied in, say, Hamlet, right? You have two different, many things that plays about, of course, but two different versions of leadership and politics and what it can be to the human endeavor, right? So you've got the effectiveness of a Claudius, who's very kind of, who knows how to move the machine, do all that stuff, the beta thing. You've got, you know, and then you've got Hamlet, who is, you know, maybe the most fully human in his empathic connection to people, his own internal kind of struggle. And you've got, as we've talked about before, Fortinbras coming through this whole thing, who's just going to kind of take the whole thing and do it, right? And so Shakespeare's always kind of building for us lessons of what does real leadership look like, I think the essential question of Hamlet, or one of them, is can he be an effective leader? Can a fully human person be an effective leader, right? And we are, this is being recorded on Monday, November 9th, and I say that because it's going to be streamed on Friday, November 13th, and where we are right now, who knows what's going to happen between now and then, so you'll forgive us if we say something that sounds totally outdated by Friday because we don't know what's going on. But just where we are right now as a country, right, we're kind of balancing this thing of we want empathy and we want this in a leader versus the strong man or the thing that comes through and tells us what to do and we can feel confident in.
Well, also, one of the things about Hamlet, which is noted as the great Western idea of theater. I mean, the foundation for Western idea where the introspective man became in the forefront, not only what the character was doing, but what the character was thinking.
Right.
But if you're going back to Frankenstein for a moment, the alpha, beta, gamma personality traits. If Fortinbras, who they leave out of Hamlet too often,
right. If
Fortinbras is saying, "I'm gonna kick ass and take names. I'm not gonna wait on anybody. I'm gonna get mine right now," and where Claudius, who I've played before, is a beta personality, thoughtful, deliberate. It's like I know how the machine works. And if Hamlet is the gamma personality, exploring his ultimate humanity, which often leaves him indecisive and inactive.
Right.
And those characteristics are applied not only to just men, but men and women throughout literature and throughout theatrical history especially. We see those characters, who's acting, who's talking, and who's thinking about it.
Right. You've also, we were talking about, speaking of your adaptations, is that you wrote a play set in the 19th century, looking at iconic figures from that period, comparing it with a Hamlet. Can you?
Well, it's very interesting that John Brown has become, back into the forefront.
You're still watching The Good Lord Bird?
I've been watching it. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And there was another John Brown movie on the other night I watched.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But John Brown, when I started working on the play is called The Original American Icon, and in my script, Frederick Douglass has been nominated to be the original American icon, and he must appear before a Senate panel, to defend the choice. The judge in the case is John Brown. He brings as his lawyer Abraham Lincoln, and they ultimately put each other on trial.
Right.
Brown says to Douglass, "You were an eloquent speaker, you talked a big game, but when it came to doing the do, you weren't there."
Right.
On the other hand, they look at Lincoln and say, "You were thoughtful and deliberative, but you would have allowed slavery to survive for another 100 years, by your own words." Brown says there was going to have to be a war. It was either going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Right.
I chose Tuesday. And even though it was a year after Harper's Ferry before the war actually started, he set it in motion. All the players came to the front and had to deal with one another. And so you have these three alpha, beta, gamma type personalities, and the chorus in the sense in the show is the American public trying to balance all three of them, because had Harper's Ferry not happened, we might not be having this conversation right now.
Right. I think what Melville called him the meteor of the war, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, but then you add to that in terms of literature, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and all of a sudden, this plight of the black man became part of the cultural conversation.
Right.
Even though, here's where the theater can be such a negative force. There would be 10 to 15 productions of Uncle Tom's Cabin leaving New York in the early part of the century going on tour around the country, totally misrepresenting the story and the reality of black life.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a couple of New York actors, no black actors.
Right.
You know, Topsy's everybody's all painted up. Uncle Tom is shuffling. Eliza, little Eliza is the ultimate heroine. All of those things. And you're out in the middle of Montana and playing for a bunch of cowboys. That's what they think it is, because many of them had never seen a black person in their lives.
Right.
So there's even some speculation, that in the first film version of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Thomas Edison played Uncle Tom. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
So the theater but when we did the production at Trinity, that was the first major role I had. Mm-hmm. In 1978, I think it was, 78 or 79. I had read Uncle Tom's Cabin, but I didn't explore it the way that Adrian Hall explored it. And the information that was coming out about it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is, the theater did this. The words of the novel didn't change.
Right.
It was the images that were projected that changed.
There's that great scene in Gangs of New York in Scorsese's film where they're watching it at that hall, right? And then it ends up they just start throwing things at the stage, and you watch the images that they have up there. It's a great look into how theater looked at that time.
But going back to Shakespeare for a moment, there are times when I look at Shakespeare, when I was an observer of Shakespeare, I just want to say this is crap. The words are not wrong. It's the way you're presenting it that's wrong. You haven't taken into account the truth of the time. And in some ways, to use the vernacular, Shakespeare was a hoe. I mean, he didn't mind telling a lie.
Yeah.
He didn't mind writing to make some money off the Queen.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't mind rewriting English history to say, you take something like the Scottish play. You go back and look at it, Banquo was really, a bad guy. And the Scotsman was not the bad guy that he's projected as.
But Banquo was
a relative of the royal family.
Right, King James, right?
King
He was
James.
writing it for him. Yeah.
So
He's
like,
no dummy. You know what I mean? He's going to get funded.
So if I got to make some money, I gotta rewrite some stuff.
Now you played Banquo in an
Yes.
incredible production at Trinity Rep, I believe, in 1990, maybe 89, somewhere around
89
there.
and 90. Oh boy, it was a long time
91,
ago.
yeah. And
With
directed
Tim
by
Crow played the Scotsman. He was terrific.
and Dick Jenkins directed.
Dick Jenkins did an amazing job.
That was it. I remember that I was a little college kid in the back in the cheap seats watching that play, and one of the things that stays with me, many things from that, but one of the chief things was, first of all, here we are at Mixed Magic, which we were talking a little bit about. This is a family affair. It's down right into its bones, and that production, your son Fleance was played by?
My oldest son, Ricardo.
Yeah.
And quick story about that.
Yeah.
After the murder of Banquo, we were rehearsing, and my son, playing Fleance, came up on stage to see the body of his father. And I heard him come up to the stage, but he was taking forever to get there. And I'm laying there covered in blood, and I was just about to say to my brother, Ricardo, get on with the scene. When he walked up to the body, took the hat off my head, and reached into the scabbard and took the sword and ran off the stage. And the people observing broke into applause. And that was one of the times in my life when I said, God, thank you for keeping my mouth shut for 5 more seconds, because I would have ruined it for him.
Yeah.
And it was such a dramatic moment. At the end of the play, when those giant doors, remember those doors open over the battlefield?
Yeah.
And Malcolm had claimed the throne, and out of the fog comes this little black kid wearing his father's hat with his father's sword,
Right.
and the prophecy of the witches was about to come true.
Right.
But one of the other things I learned during that show was Shakespeare makes you look at characters and say, if you strip away the language, what are they?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, or when you're teaching acting and teaching, play interpretation, you look at a character and say, you can only define a character by what the character says about themselves, what other people say about the character, and what the author says about the character. Mm-hmm. Once you start going outside of those kind of parameters, you're making stuff up. Mm-hmm. And I went back and looked at Banquo and said, what do people say about Banquo? What does what is the Scotsman? I'm not going to curse us here, Tony. What does he say about his friend? Yeah. What does the king say about Banquo? Mm-hmm. Banquo was just a regular guy who got called upon to be a soldier again. Mm-hmm. And his buddy, the Scotsman, they were fierce warriors. Mm-hmm. I mean,
well, they describe, right in the beginning, what they do on that battlefield.
What they do is just like amazing. Yeah. I mean, people come and say, we're losing the battle. And say, oh, well, wait a minute.
Not anymore.
The tide got turned.
Right.
These guys came in there and tore it up.
Right.
Well, anybody who's that type of character, and this is where I give Dick Jenkins a lot of credit for allowing actors to help build characters. I said, this man is a warrior all the time. Mm-hmm. And, he's coming off the battlefield. I helped design my own costume for the show. I must have had 15 weapons on me because he was just a fierce warrior. Mm-hmm. I had knives here, I had knives here, I had knives here, I had stuff everywhere. Mm-hmm. Because I just believed he was always ready to do battle. He drops his guard.
Right.
One time. And when the Scotsman comes to visit him in Flayance and says, where are you going today? We're going off for a ride.
Right.
And they asked him, is the son going to come with him? That should have raised a red flag, but it didn't. It did. Even on the heath, he says, the witches said a prophecy that's kind of, whoa, what's up with that, And he said, well, you're going to be a king. He said, no. But you're going to be the father of kings. It's like, yeah. Right. But Banquo didn't take it as seriously,
right,
as the Scotsman did.
Right.
But that kind of material forces you to go back and say, what is the essential story being told? And how many times in Shakespeare does it take one person to do the right thing one time, and that happens, and the sequence of events unfolds totally differently?
Yeah.
What if in Hamlet, old Hamlet, when he encountered his son after he had been murdered, what if he had said, you should be the king? He never says that.
Never says it, nope.
What if Gertrude had said, well, wait a minute. My son should be the king. She never says it. Mm-hmm. Even his best friend doesn't say it. Nobody says you should be the king. Mm-hmm. Maybe because they were at a state of war and everybody knew Hamlet was not ready to be a wartime king.
Right.
Or if they had not sent for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, mm-hmm. You go back through in Othello. If Amelia had given the handkerchief back to its rightful owner, mm-hmm. Desdemona, everything would have been different. So often it depends on somebody doing the right thing one time.
Right.
And that's why some of his work is so brilliant, because he says human nature says we rarely
ever do it.
We rarely ever do it.
Right.
You know, and even some of the best writing ever written is Amelia's realization that she had been a pawn in Iago's plot against Othello. Oh my God.
Right. Well, it's something I actually wanted to talk about, and we'll get a little text to explore this. But in all of his plays, particularly in the tragedies, we have these incredible moments of recognition, is what you're talking about. When someone recognizes, when one of the characters recognizes that, as you just said with Amelia, that everything I have been doing has been wrong, right? Wrong. You know, and that moment which then reorders the rest of the story. So Othello, when he figures out that he has been manipulated, everything goes back. Hamlet gets the realization that I'm going to do this, and then that, you know, he ends up killing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and thinking this is how he has to be, and then he realizes that's not the way to be, and ends up kind of flipping the whole thing around. You know, there's all of these incredible moments of where the character has recognition, and which often leads to redemption, usually in someone's death, right? So the tragedies always end, you know, bodies littering the floor in dissolution somehow, but we have order again. And thinking about the events of this week and the last couple of weeks and what we've been dealing with in the country, and obviously Shakespeare is a great author in terms of thinking about power and politics and its consequences, yes. and what he never loses in his plays is that these things are enacted by actual human beings, yes. Right? Which we're looking at it, and we always think of them, you know, our current president as almost a cartoon character, right? Yeah. And we forget that. So what is there humanity there? What is the humanity there? Is there, you know, do we hold out any? Is recognition in our current situation possible, right?
Well, if you were to look at Julius Caesar as a metaphor for, you know, I mean, Shakespeare, you know, took liberties with Roman history and natural history and things like that. But what he did was he created so many characters who each had a conscience, another voice of consciousness in their ear saying, you need to think about this.
Right.
Calpurnia. Cassius, Casca.
The soothsayer.
Yeah, the soothsayer.
Right.
Everybody got a chance to say that. You know, it's like, do you see what's happening here? There's a consequence for this. Right. There's a, you know, Brutus. Brutus had an opportunity to do the right thing. You know, on the other hand, Caesar became his own worst enemy in saying that, oh, well, wait a minute. You know, I just love the way he sets it up with the time he waves at the crowd, you know. And every time he waves, it's a little less, you know, it's like, no, I don't want to be the emperor. You know, well, okay, maybe just for a couple of days, you know, until ultimately it's like, I can do this.
Yeah, it's not unlike Richard III. Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, little old me, sure, I can do that. Yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
Right. And then it's all over, right?
One of the great moments in film history is when Olivier plays Richard. Yeah. And it's not a great film, but not to me, but that moment when he gets the throne and his boy, I forget his name, you know, says, all right, we got it. And he
Buckingham.
But he sticks out his hand. Kiss the ring, baby.
You show me your loyalty.
Show me your loyalty.
Right.
It's like, you know, in that moment, this is not going to end good.
Right.
You know, but also, we sometimes have a tendency to separate the influence of Shakespeare on pop culture. First time I read Richard III, I went, this is the Incredible Hulk. This is Bruce Banner and the Hulk. You know, anybody who could stop a funeral procession and woo the widow can picture himself gorgeous, beautiful, charming. You know, Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
But don't make me mad.
Yeah.
You know, I you know, when I did a scene from a Shakespeare company, I realized that, you know, they talked about his atrophied arm, his club foot, the hump on his back. I said, wait a minute. This stuff doesn't happen until you make him mad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other than that, he's charming and beautiful, and you know, but you start to make him mad.
Right. Things start to change.
And something starts to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But now that I am in this state, I have to do something. And you forced me to do it.
Right.
See, Shakespeare constantly gives the actor an opportunity to add things that don't always exist in the given text. We're so used to getting stage directions, you know, in play scripts that we read and things like that. Shakespeare put the play direction in the line.
In the line, absolutely.
And
there's very few stage directions that we know of, right?
There's exits pursued by a lion.
Bear, yeah,
a bear,
pursued by a bear, yeah.
You know.
And they fight. That's about it.
Oh, they fight.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Mercutio is stabbed.
Yeah, right.
It's like, well,
yeah.
You know, why came you between us?
Yeah.
I was wounded under your arm.
Don't even need the stage direction. It's all on the line.
I got so you know what happened.
You know what happened, yeah.
It always puzzles me a little bit. Not that I'm loath to it. In fact, I'm looking forward to an opportunity to do an all-female production of a Shakespeare show. But I often wonder when you go outside of the norm, whatever the norm is, how do you get back to the essential truth of what the play is about?
Right.
I mean, Judith Dench, the actress who played Prospero.
Helen Mirren.
Oh man, she was great.
She was great, yeah.
She was great. But the thing that she really taught me was she didn't change Prospero. She made you know, I tell young actors all the time, don't become a character. Let the character become you. Right. Because the audience is not looking at something that doesn't exist. They're looking at you.
Right.
You know, I played Martin Luther King 5 times. I don't look anything like Martin Luther King, but I have to figure out a way to let the audience accept me as that. You know, Adrian Hall was brilliant at just coming out in front of the audience and saying, all right, I'm playing a white guy. All right, that's all you get.
Yeah.
The audience has to deal with it after that.
Right.
Because after that, you know.
It's a challenge to the imagination to say, can you suspend your disbelief? And then we're asking the audience to actually learn something about humanity by that. You have to go the extra mile. It's maybe going to be a little tricky. It's going to be a little, you know, you're going to kind of bristle against it. Why is a woman playing Prospero? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you kind of lose yourself in that, especially in a performance like Helen Mirren's, and you say, you know, where someone can really do it. And then you go, wow. I'm now thinking of that character differently.
Yeah, I think of the character different. But what I appreciated, which I always wondered about before I saw things like that, was how can you, when you bend gender, how do you keep the essential truth of character? And then I saw that and I said, you just have to get out of the way of the words. Right. Get out of the way. Put your own preconceptions out of the way. I just saw Tammy Brown do Hamlet in Hamlet at Contemporary Theatre. I had no problem with her performance. Right. You know, because she didn't let the gender get in the way of it. Right. She just say the line sometimes and get out of its way. I have a tendency when I direct Shakespeare to do something I call no time Shakespeare. You know, I just want to tell the story. I'm not going to set it on Wall Street. You know, because you constantly having to defend your choice.
You have to go really far with that, and sometimes it can work, and sometimes it can really fall flat on its face. Yeah.
Sometimes what's happening in the contemporary society is already enough of a defining place.
Right, like we're talking about what's going on right now in our world. Everyone's going to bring in that in the room and putting it on whatever you're doing.
They're going to absolutely. So trying to, you know, that's another thing about Shakespeare. He wrote it to make a connection with his audience.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, you know, that's why he didn't try to disguise things. He came out at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet. He says, two households both alike. We're going to take 2 hours. They're going to kill each other, and and that's the play.
Right. Well, the dumb show in Hamlet, he gives the whole thing away before he does it. And it's like sometimes people cut that because they're like, why are we going to do it twice? But what is it about letting the audience know what's coming and then giving them something even more? Even
more. Yeah. Or investing in the idea that you can't go to Romeo and Juliet and not know what's going to happen. But if you do it well and do it right, the audience is like, maybe if we wish enough, maybe we can break this cycle. Yeah. Maybe. And it's like, oh, you did it to me again.
Yeah. Fool, you got me again, right. Lucy pulling the football away, you know what I mean? But we try every time, you know what I mean?
We try it every time.
So we're coming a little bit towards the end of our time, speaking of, and speaking of this idea of recognition and what we're all going through today, and another Mad King, we were talking about Richard III, and a role that you have played, and you played here at Mixed Magic Outdoors, King Lear, which we've talked about, and I know that you probably would like to do again, and again, and again, and again, right?
Well, I can still carry Cordelia in at the end of the play.
Can you do that?
I can still do it.
Yeah.
As long as she doesn't weigh the same amount I do.
What's the old do you have advice on playing Lear? And they say, get a light Cordelia.
Get a light Cordelia.
Yeah.
Because to not carry her in defeats the whole purpose of the play. But one of the things also learning about King Lear is, I've seen some doddering old King Lears that, it's like, when we were working on it, my son directed it, he did a wonderful job. We wondered, why are his Goneril and Reagan so fearful of him? Mm-hmm. Because he may be losing his marbles a little bit, but he's still vital. Mm-hmm. He's still young at heart. He could live for another 40 years, which would make their lives miserable for another 40 years. Yeah. The brilliance of Shakespeare in writing King Lear is, you see this vital, important, vigorous man. Mm-hmm. It's that decline that makes the play so interesting.
And what he learns in the decline, what the decline forces him to learn.
In the decline, so that when you get to him carrying Cordelia, his last act of life is to carry in his daughter.
His daughter, yeah. So we're going to look at two short pieces here. I want to look at the very first speech when he comes on stage and wants to divide his kingdom up. And then after that, we'll talk about that for a second, but then jump to right after the famous storm scene and what he learns as as his decline is happening and he is falling apart, and what's happened to him over the course of the play in his, as he says, let me not, as he's losing his mind. So this first is right at the beginning of the play, and this is when he divides his kingdom up and wants to parcel it out in terms of how much love he gets back from his daughters.
Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. Give me the map there. Know that we have divided in three our kingdom, and it is our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strengths while we, unburdened, crawl toward death. Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of rule, interests of territory, cares of state, which of you, shall we say, doth love us most? That we our largest bounty shall extend where nature doth with merit challenge.
Wonderful. Magnificent to hear that you don't need anybody to put any more bass in your voice. What are you talking about? And this is, I thought about this because had been talking about it and with everything that's been going on, and I thought about a guy who comes out and says, as you said, kiss the ring.
Kiss the ring.
Where's the loyalty, right? And here we are as a country kind of dealing with this, a current, it was about where's my loyalty? What is the human experience of governance and politics has become about a kind of exchange, of loyalty, of, this with threat. As it's, you won't get, I will take away from you. We're watching that happen right now, right? And yet, as Shakespeare always tells us, this is as we look for some hope in the world, right? We watch this same person that we just, saw govern very, very badly. go through, as we talked about, his decline, et cetera, and what he learns. His recognition comes after he's almost killed himself in basically a hurricane.
Yeah.
He's out in the middle of this thing, mostly naked, right?
Yeah.
And he is stripped of everything, all of these things that he's now handing out. He's got nothing left, right, except his words. And we hear from him a lesson on what our responsibility is to our fellow men and women.
Poor naked wretches, wheresoever you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I've taken too little care of this. Take physic, pomp, expose thyself to feel what wretches feel, that thou may shake the superflux to them and show the heavens more just.
Yeah. Expose thyself to feel what wretches feel, that thou may shake the superflux to them and show the heavens more just. That's a pretty incredible recognition for someone to make it 80 years old.
Yeah, and we come to wisdom when we come to wisdom. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some people come to it earlier, some people come to it later. Some people have to be tried by fire. Mm-hmm. We forget, if you're reading the history of King Lear, he built a kingdom. Mm-hmm. He conquered land. He was heroic to his people. Mm-hmm. But in his decline, what he didn't do necessarily with his daughters was pass on empathy or the need to preserve the kingdom. Mm-hmm. What was good. He didn't insist that in their lives. All he wanted at the end was, which one of you loved me the most? Right. And when Cordelia says, well, I love you, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to beg for this, And he said, oh, you won't? Mm-hmm. Oh, you won't kiss the ring? Mm-hmm. Well, get out of here. Mm-hmm. And isn't it interesting? Of all the ones who come to his defense at the end, it's her.
Yeah. She's the most like him of all of them.
She, oh man. It's hard to talk about Lear also without talking about the fool and Edgar. The fool, his conscience, who kept telling him, baby, you got to watch yourself here. As
you were saying, there's always that person that tells you.
There's somebody there to tell you. Mm-hmm. And then Edgar, who goes in disguise to save his life and to save his father.
And it's the recognition of Edgar as he basically, right, he's homeless, right? And he's out in the middle of the woods with nothing, and that's what Lear sees and makes this speech.
And says, you understand. Mm-hmm. I finally met somebody who understands the wretchedness of the human condition, but the hope of the human condition also. Right. One of my favorite scenes in that play, I got to play with Bill Pett, who played Gloucester on the Heath. Oh my God. Every once in a while, and we all have these moments in our memory, where something happens to two actors in a scene where they both just let everything, all the pretense fall off. Mm-hmm. And Bill Pett and I, men of relative same age and so on, who had nothing to try to gain. We're not going to win an Oscar or an Emmy or Tony for our performances. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while you get a chance to say, you know what? Let's just do this. Mm-hmm. Because that's what actors do. Mm-hmm. The scene on the Heath, in that great line, I hope I'm not misquoting it, like flies to wanton boys, we are to the gods. Yep. They kill us for their sport. It's like, but this, one of the things that Shakespeare does also is, he makes you earn a chance to say a lie. Mm-hmm. when I'm teaching, I always tell my young actors, don't get there before you get there, because then you'll have nowhere to go.
Right.
You know, Othello spends the whole play to get to, it is the cause.
Cause. Yep. Right.
It is the cause, my soul. Let me not name it, you chase stars. It is the cause. That's it. But if you haven't earned the right to say that, it's just hollow.
It's hollow, right?
And in all literature and great language, poetry and so on, it demands that the performer earn the opportunity to say certain things.
Right.
Don't just say them because they're on the page. Right. I mean, and sometimes the best way to get there is just to just get there and say the line.
Say the line.
Because it already has enough gravitas to it. It is the cause. It is the cause of my soul. Let me not name it, you chase stars. It is the cause.
Well, the weight of the simplicity. And
weight
the
of
power that it
simplicity.
carries. And if you get all, like you were saying earlier, you get all tricky with it. If you think I've got to speak in somebody else's voice, you know, it comes out and the audience can smell the phony.
Find your voice.
Find your voice.
Find your voice. And also, just as, you know, I'm looking at these lines for the first time in probably 15 years, you know. But one of the things in looking at them, when you handed me the page, it's like, I had to remind myself, Rick, that the poetry take care of itself.
Right.
You know, something else. I love the kids at Central Falls High School. Dolores Grant is an amazing teacher over there. And I've been working there maybe 5-7 years now, and working with the kids on the Shakespeare scenes. I mean, to watch 60 kids at an inner city school walk up and do a Shakespeare monologue is a thing of wonder, thing of absolute wonder. But sometimes when you're working on the sonnets or a scene, you got to try to demystify.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the language. You know, it's like when you're doing a sonnet, you know, every sonnet that Shakespeare wrote was just saying, baby, I love you and I'm just trying to figure out a way to tell you.
Yeah.
That's all he's trying to say.
It's every one of them.
Every
154.
one of them is like, you know, you are bad. And I wish I had the language to tell you how bad you are, but I don't, so I just got to use what I got.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again, if you take a monologue, you take a scene and just break it down to hath not a Jew. What separates me from you? That's it.
Yeah.
What's the difference between me and you? You say this, I say this. You know, have not, you know, he asked, don't we have blood? Don't we have lungs? Don't we have hearts? Don't we, you know, so what's the difference? And what you teach me is what I'm going to learn from. It happens in Caliban in The Tempest. Right. It happens in The Creature in Frankenstein. Yeah. The creature at one point says, I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Over and over and over again, if you can get to the essence of what's being said, what the point of it is, and then energize it with life. Allow the audience a chance to be a part of the ride. I will admire Adrian Hall forever for his ability to remind actors over and over again, it's a relationship between the actor and the audience.
And the audience, that's it. Yep.
It's a partnership. And if they won't invest in the ride, you know. By the same token, it always discouraged me when I hear actors, especially in playwrights, say, "Oh, we were too deep. They didn't get it." No, you weren't too deep. You missed the boat. Yeah. They didn't get it because you ignored or you didn't work hard enough to help them get it.
Right. You got to reach out.
You got to reach out. You know, we're so deep, we're so smart that we're just above them. Well, you know, you're also not working.
Yeah. You can't pay your rent.
You can't pay your rent.
Yeah.
You're deep, but you can't pay your rent.
As you pointed out, Shakespeare, put pen to paper because he had to pay the rent.
I got to pay the I got some kids.
Yeah. Not only has he has the flat in the South Bank, he's got a farm back home, about 100 miles away that he's going to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, and a mistress.
Yeah. Everything. He's supporting a lot.
He's supporting a lot.
Well, they were, like Moliere, the same thing. The greatest, we go back centuries and say, who were the greatest people? And as if they were in some garret writing, they were men at that time of the theater. They were on stage. They were making their rent by doing. They had to please a lot of people in order to do that.
They had to please a lot of people. Well, which makes a movie like Shakespeare in Love, that for an actor, it is such an interesting movie exercise because the question is, can a man can write a scene and tell a truth greater than a woman can? Maybe not. But then when you read Gallop Apace in Romeo and Juliet, you read it, you just have to laugh out loud sometimes. You say, I don't know how he got into the imagination of a 14-year-old girl, but he sure did.
He sure did.
Because, and I think he did because he trusted that 14-year-old girl to have her own voice. He didn't try to put his voice in her. He let her have her own voice, and he just scribed it. Gallop apace you fiery footed steeds toward Phoebus' lodging. Oh my God. He sets a tempo. He sets a heart racing. And he ends it when he shall die, cut him out,
little stars,
cut him into little pieces, and cast his image on the stars, so all the world will know. I mean, that's some. Do you know one of my uncles who was not much older than me? He died about 12 years ago now, and my aunt asked that I be the only speaker at his funeral. I would speak for our entire family, which is a huge family. I was honored. I was scared, but I was honored. And I quoted from Horatio's paying homage to the fallen Hamlet, But I also quoted from the Gallop Apace speech, and when he shall die, take him out and cut him into little pieces, And I can remember I'm in front of a church full of people, and I started saying those lines. I was so proud to be an actor at that moment too, and understand what I was doing. I was also emotionally on fire. But I can remember a minister who was sitting off to the side of me. He stopped in his chair and just went. And I was reminded of the power of the theater to make an impression if you just tell the truth. If you don't add too much to it. Understand the moment you're in. Understand the moment the character is in. That's why it's so difficult when young actors learn a monologue and they don't read the play. See, you learn some lines, but you don't know the moment you're in. Know the moment you're in, and trust it.
And it's why we come back to him so often at those crisis points, those rites of passage, the things that really matter. We look to the great literature, as you have spent your life working on, Ricardo. And we're at the end of the time, but this is, I know it goes, I told you it was going to go by too fast. This has been an incredible privilege to share and hear these stories and your investment in this art form, in every art form, writer, director, actor, composer, teacher, et cetera, et cetera. We have not even covered the smallest iota at the tip of the iceberg in this, but a life marinating in this stuff and the great stuff, and how that radiates from you to this community in this space and many, many other spaces. It's been a privilege to share today. Thank you so much.
If I might just put a quote on it by saying, the greatest things ever done have not been done. That's right. And if you write a play, then go back and read some Shakespeare. I'm a firm believer in the villages of art. Yeah. There are the villages of playwrights, the villages of poetry, the villages of composers. All you have to do to get a key to that village is write something, do something. And once you get a key into the village, you'll find, unlike scholars may try to dictate to you, the people themselves that are in those villages, they welcome you. Because they're the ones who say, what have you done? I know that if Shakespeare were alive today, he would take the money from Harvard for the seat. He would eat the bad chicken dinners every other weekend. But as soon as he got his paycheck, he would go find Jay-Z and Eminem and Dr. Dre and just say, roll that out for me one more time, because that's an unnatural rhyme, but it makes a lot of sense. Because they were in the hip hop artists of the day are in the business of creating language. He was in the business of creating language, trying to find a way to say it. And if you want to be in the village with the greats, do something, get a key, go in, but go in humbly, because the people there are already humble.
Yep.
All right.
And make something new.
Make something new.
Right.
And tell an old story.
Thank you, Ricardo. We're not quite done yet, because like I said earlier, that we're taping on Monday the 9th. This is going to air on Friday the 13th, which I believe people think is an unlucky day, but not this year, because it's your birthday, right?
I was born on Friday the 13th.
You were you?
Yes, I was.
We're not going to ask anybody's age today. Happy 39th birthday. Ready, everybody, join me in singing along, and please somebody sing who's better than I am. Happy birthday to
my God.
you. Happy birthday to you. This is going to be hard. Happy birthday, dear Ricardo. Happy birthday to you. Woo!
Live long and prosper.
Thanks, everybody. And so you'll be watching this on Friday the 13th. Be kind, be good to each other. Take care of everybody out there. Be safe. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.